We often hear about the Renaissance as this magical explosion of art and culture in Italy. But how did it change the literary history of the world? Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are diving into the age of Elizabeth, a period between 1508 and 1603 where England opened its eyes and changed the way humans think, write and explore forever. The Elizabethan period was an age of adventure. It was a time when the human mind was lured by visions of distant lands rich in gold and jewels. But more than material wealth, it was a general love for knowledge. People no longer felt it was a sin to seek the unknown. Instead, they were intoxicated by the magnificent possibilities of power, beauty, and love. First, what does Renaissance ever mean? French historian Jules Michelet coined the term in 1855, and it means rebirth. It was the birth of modern world out of the ashes of the Dark Ages. In England, while it began with the accession of Henry VII in 1485, it reached its manhood during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. It was an era of individualism where the English mind finally woke up to its own powers, finding new worlds and new ways to think about man. It wasn't just about art, it was about individualism, the idea that you matter as an individual. It was about breaking down old rigid convictions to find something new. Three major factors that stimulated this moment was humanism, the printing press, and the discovery of the New World. Following the fall of Constantinople in 1453, Greek scholars fled to Italy with classical manuscripts. This revival of learning turned people away from the penance of the Middle Ages toward a new interest in life and mankind. Caxton's introduction of the printing press replaced handcrafted manuscripts with mass-produced books, creating a new, vast reading public. Voyages by explorers like Columbus, Cabot, and Drake brought back not just gold and silver, but a strange breath of wonder that flamed the imagination of poets and playwrights. Characteristics of the Elizabethan age. Nationalism. After defeating the Spanish Armada, the English spirit was at an all-time high. They felt invincible. Religious settlement. Queen Elizabeth brought a sense of stability and toleration, freeing people's minds from fear and persecution. Social contentment. Manufacturing was up, people had jobs, and for the first time, there was a sense of social security. Material advancement. Commerce was booming. The contrast between owning Old England and Elizabeth's England was night and day. The spirit of adventure. It was an age of dreams and deeds. People were hungry for new experiences. Humanism. Led by scholars like Erasmus, the focus shifted from enduring life as a penance to making life larger and happier. Before the great plays, there was a prose and poetry. Sir Thomas More's Utopia was the true prologue to Renaissance. Francis Bacon's essay brought practical Machiavellian wisdom to the ordinary reader. Wyatt and Surrey, these two diplomats brought the Italian spirit to English poetry, introducing the sonnet and blank verse. Thomas Wyatt was the first to introduce the Petrarchan sonnet to England. Other than sonnets, Thomas Wyatt wrote satires in terza rima and didactic Latin-style epistles. Thomas Wyatt wrote 96 love sonnets, which were published in Total's Miscellany. Surrey was the first English poet to use unrhymed iambic pentameter, which is blank verse, in his translation of Virgil's Aeneid. This form eventually became the standard for English epic poetry and the plays of Christopher Marlowe and Shakespeare. Edmund Spenser, the touchstone of sensibility, whose fairy queen expressed the Renaissance ideal of adventure. Sir Philip Sidney. Sidney was the most commanding literary figure before Spenser. He was the greatest Elizabethan sonneteer. Astrophel and Stella is a collection of 108 sonnets addressed to Lady Penelope Devereux. Thomas More published the book called Utopia in 1516. In his book, More describes a fictional island nation with its own complex social, religious, and political customs. It was intended as a sharp satirical critique of the corruption, greed, and political chaos of the 16th century Europe. Edmund Spenser, The Shepherd's Calendar, which was published in 1579. This work marked the real beginning of the great Elizabethan outburst. Modeled on Virgil and Theocritus, it contains 12 eclogues blending love, poetry, and religion. It was the first national poem in 200 years, praised for its melody and pastoral charm. Fairy Queen, the masterpiece of Edmund Spenser. Spenser created the Spenserian stanza, which is 8 decasyllabic lines followed by an Alexandrine. Emerity and Epithalamion, which was published in 1595. Unlike the unrequited love of Sidney, Spenser's Emerity sonnets are unique for their purity and white light, celebrating his love for Elizabeth Boyle. Epithalamion is a triumphant, colorful song that medievalizes the classical form, concluding the sonnet sequence with joy. He also wrote Prothalamion, or spousal verse in honor of the double marriage of Lady Elizabeth and Lady Catherine Somerset. The University Wits. Before Shakespeare, a group of young, educated men known as the University Wits transformed the English stage. These were scholars from Oxford and Cambridge who wrote for the leisured reading public and the popular stage. Key figures include John Lilly, known for his prose work Euphues; Robert Greene, famous for his short novels based on Italian stories; Christopher Marlowe, the most significant of the group, often called the true child of Renaissance. His plays like Tamburlaine, Dr. Faustus, and Jew of Malta are the epitome of Renaissance aspirations. His characters reflect a love for power, wealth, and infinite knowledge. George Peele. He is famous for The Old Wives' Tale, Arraignment of Paris, Titus Andronicus, which he co-authored with William Shakespeare. Thomas Lodge is famous for Rosalind, Euphues' Golden Legacy. It is a direct source for Shakespeare's As You Like It. Thomas Nash's famous work is The Unfortunate Traveller. Thomas Kidd is grouped with the University Wits because his dramatic style, themes, and structural innovations perfectly matched that movement even though he didn't attend Oxford or Cambridge. He wrote Spanish tragedy, the definitive prototype for Elizabethan revenge tragedy, including Shakespeare's Hamlet. Now let's talk about William Shakespeare, the man of all ages. Shakespeare is not just a poet of England, but of all mankind. As Ben Jonson famously asserted, he was not of an age, but for all times. Shakespeare is essentially a poet of life. He accepted the dross and gold, the beauty and the ugliness of the world. He embraced man with all his faults. As Mariana says in Measure for Measure, they say best men are molded out of faults. Whether it is King Lear or the characters in his romances, Shakespeare emphasizes charity and tolerance. He believed in what Alexander Pope would later say that to err is human, to forgive divine. While Shakespeare didn't write a formal philosophy, his works are a rich treasure house of wisdom. Even without poetic justice, there is an implicit faith in a moral order. Empires fall and social orders change, but the heartbeats found in Shakespearean tragedy, love, grief, ambition, remain the same through the centuries. When we talk about Shakespeare's canon, we are looking at roughly 38 plays, 155 sonnets, and a few narrative poems. To make this massive body of work scannable, scholars traditionally split his plays in 4 main genres. First, the tragedies. These are Shakespeare's deep dives into human psychology, flawed nobility, and devastating downfalls. Hamlet, Macbeth, King Lear, Othello, and Romeo and Juliet. These are the tragedies of Shakespeare. Second, the comedies. Shakespearean comedies aren't always laugh out loud, funny in the modern sense. Rather, they are defined by social chaos, mistaken identities, gender bending disguise, and a mandatory happy ending. A Midsummer Night's Dream, Twelfth Night, Much Ado About Nothing, The Merchant of Venice are his famous comedies. Historical plays or the histories. These plays served as both epic political dramas and Tudor propaganda. Shakespeare dramatized the rise and fall of English monarchs, focusing heavily on volatile wars of the Roses. Henry IV, Part 1 and Part 2, Henry V are the tragedies of Shakespeare. Romances or the late plays, written at the very end of his career. These plays blend elements of tragedy and comedy. They usually feature tragic setups like loss, exile, or broken families, but conclude with magical redemption, forgiveness, and reunion. The Tempest and the Winter's Tale. Beyond the theatre, Shakespeare was an accomplished poet, most notably turning to poetry when the London theatres were shut down due to outbreaks of the plague. Sonnets, published in 1609. These poems revolutionized the country love tradition. Instead of just praising an unattainable woman, they are addressed to a young man, the fair youth, a mysterious dark lady, and a rival poet tackling aging, lust, and time. Narrative poems. Longer works like Venus and Adonis and Rape of Lucrece was also written by Shakespeare. The first folio was published in 1623. If Shakespeare's fellow actors John Hemmings and Henry Condell hadn't gathered his plays into a single volume 7 years after his death, about half of his plays, including Macbeth, Twelfth Night, and The Tempest, would have been lost to history forever. Now let's talk about the father of English essay, Sir Francis Bacon. Sir Francis Bacon was born in 1561. Even as a boy, his wit was so sharp that Queen Elizabeth I jokingly called him her young Lord Keeper. His life was a roller coaster. He rose to become the Lord Chancellor under King James I, only to be impeached for malpractice in 1621. He spent his final years in scholarly exile, eventually dying in 1626 from a cold he caught while performing a scientific experiment with snow. He literally died in the pursuit of knowledge. Bacon borrowed the word essay from the Frenchman Montaigne, but he turned it into something uniquely English. He published his essays in 3 editions. First folio, which was published in 1597, contains 10 essays. The second edition, which was published in 1612, contains 38 essays. And the third and definitive edition, which was published in 1626, contains 58 essays. Unlike other essayists who wanted to become your friend, Bacon wrote a handbook of practical wisdom. He looked at the world like a game of chess, providing wise and faithful counsel on everything from truth and death to gardens and negotiation. Bacon is the king of aphorism. In his early work, he used almost no connecting words, just pithy jottings where every sentence was a standalone heavy hitter. You might have come across his quotes like, "Knowledge is power," "Reading maketh a full man," "Conference a ready man," and "Writing an exact man." Some books are to be tasted, others to be swallowed, and some few to be chewed and digested. His important works are The Essays or Counsels, Civil and Morals, which was published in 1626, The Advancement of Learning, which was published in 1605, The Wisdom of the Ancients, which was published in 1609, The New Instrument, which was published in 1620. The History of Henry VII, published in 1622. New Atlantis, which was published in 1626. A Natural History, published in 1626. So this was all about the Elizabethan age, its characteristics and its prominent writers that shaped the age. If you find this video insightful, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe the channel.